Hey again, everybody. It's Mike and David back from JinbuPal for the 8th week. We're checking in on David's progress using the brand new JinbuPal app that he's built, and he's using it to learn Chinese characters and words himself. So yeah, we're just going to tag up with David and see how he's been doing with everything. If you haven't been watching the series and you're interested in seeing more from the start of David's journey through learning Mandarin, you can click on the link up here or in the video description down below and go all the way back to the first video in the series. So let's get started. How's it going, David?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Can't complain.
Good. So another week done. This week was one of those weeks where I had a bunch of days where I was just like crazy busy and didn't get to study. But I did make some progress, especially working with tones. So let me share my screen. All right, let's see. Yeah, earlier I was just kind of like looking at everything I've learned. I started to like kind of just go through characters with like the highest frequency and just knock out the tone. So I've been really trying to just practice those. And a lot of them obviously come up a lot in my reading. So it's kind of nice to like kind of reinforce both the tones, but also the opinion and the meaning as well. Here's my progress. You can see.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's climbing up there slowly but surely. Kind of some dead space in here, but have been trying to make some progress. See if I can pull up my history. So yeah, all of these green ones are most likely I was, learning the tones for them. Today there were a couple new ones I added just through my reading. But yeah, making some progress. One thing that I did over this weekend was I went through and like downloaded a ton of Pinyin pronunciation apps just in the App Store, because I still like am trying to practice my pronunciation, especially since like I haven't been practicing my speaking with any native speakers or anyone that knows Mandarin. And it was kind of interesting to see what's out there. Like I probably downloaded about 5 or 6 apps.
Okay.
A handful of them, probably like 2 or 3 of them, for whatever reason, like the audio wasn't working for any of the sounds that they had, so they were pretty useless. I looked at Hello Chinese.
Yep.
Have you ever used that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's similar to like the Duolingo format.
Yeah, so I downloaded that, and they have in it a couple different modes. They kind of have your like standard, let's learn some words mode, and then they have like a pronunciation practice portion of it. But I found that like I don't know what it was, but like the way that it pronounced the syllables was like very robotic or like drawn out.
Yeah.
It was like almost like they were like splicing together sounds or something like that. And so I wasn't quite sure. It didn't feel like a good practice for it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there's another one called, let's see, I have these on my phone.
Yeah, and I would say that, that's going to be kind of common with stuff like, even our pronunciations native in the JinbuPal app are a little, it's a little drawn out because it's using it for an example, but they're not robotic because we actually recorded all of those. But it's, I mean, the best way to hear it is just listening to a good bit of audio. And even if it's, we talked about this in one of the past weeks, go find a podcast or a YouTube video or something and just put it on the background and, don't worry about understanding anywhere near to everything that you're hearing.
Yeah. I actually did that the other day with like, it was like a Chinese baseball league on Twitch or something. It was like live streaming games. And so I
Okay.
kind of had that on in the background for a little bit and was just trying to listen and recognize different sounds and stuff. It was interesting.
Were you able to pick out different sounds? Were you able to pick out different tones? And were there any times where you could tell, I know what they are saying, even if it's just a few words or anything like that?
Whenever they would say China, I think I could pick that out, like Zhongguo.
Yeah.
Like I could pick that out. I mean, there were sounds that I could recognize. I had no idea what they were saying though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's good to get a little bit of, you pick those sort of things out, and maybe even just hearing a little bit more of what ni ta, those very easy pronouns and things, or maybe at the end of this sentence you hear like a ma, that sort of thing. And it's slowly just kind of, you get used to those patterns. I remember one thing that I heard a lot of when I first started listening to podcasts, that was, there's some things that you can't capture through reading that well unless you have a transcript of a physical conversation, because there's some things that just don't end up making it into kind of formal writing. Like, when we're talking right now and you're saying like, yeah. So in Chinese, you would say, dui, 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 dui. And the first few times I heard that, I didn't know what people were saying. And it's actually, it's dui, like dui you, or dui buchi. It's, you'd recognize it if we pulled up your list of characters that because it's one of the most common characters. But I just didn't know that usage for it, and then you use it all the time when you start talking with people. So little things like that you just start picking up on more and more of. But obviously, I mean, I still think the listening part is one of the hardest things. So come slowly, but you get there.
No, that makes sense. Another thing that happened this week as I was studying is I was doing some reading, and I was kind of mousing over all of the characters in a sentence, and they mentioned the word for Sunday, and so I went and let me share my screen and show. This actually happened today. So I went and learned Joe. Joe.
Yeah.
And if I can show the words that include it. How do you pronounce this?
That's
Yeah, I don't really know how to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar. it's more of a I don't know how to describe it.
It's not with an E, right? It's
Yeah, not with, it's not like R, like ER would be more like R, like almost like a pirate sound, like R, um, or, but it's like,
ooh.
it's like, but RI is like if you were to say like red, like r, r. It's the, I would say it's similar to that R sound, but the other easy way to distinguish it is from RE, which is a r, 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 r. So it's got that, anything with an E at the end of it is more like a sort of sound, like if somebody punched you in the gut, like r, 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 r.
Huh.
It's a
I'll have to
joker.
practice that. But yeah, so I learned this word, and then like I realized like, oh, look, all of these other days of the week like have a similar type of format, and it's like very easy to remember this.
Yeah.
And so, and I think there might have even been some numbers that I hadn't learned yet that I just like went ahead. I think like the number for 5, the
Yep.
character for 5, I
Yep.
didn't know yet. So I went through and learned a bunch of those. And I was wondering, like, as you were studying, like in JinbuPal, we don't categorize characters like a lot of the other apps are. But I think it's kind of natural to, when you see a common pattern um, in my studying, like it's very natural for me to go ahead and like check off all of the, okay, let me just learn all the days of the week because I
Yeah.
know a couple of them. And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering, like, when, as you were learning and like as we like kind of approach sort of the study ethos for JinbuPal, like how do you deal with these kind of natural categories or groups that will just come up as you're learning words that have similar characters and things like that?
Yeah. So I started creating some of those sort of lists and things at one point, and we can certainly look at maybe incorporating that at some point, but it very quickly spirals out of control when you any abstract sort of words start being difficult to do that with, which that's fine. We don't necessarily need to do that with those, but I would say for me personally, my approach was similar to yours, or what you just described, in that I would learn one. And granted, I started off, obviously we built this whole thing. So I started off on my own, kind of using a little bit of something from this app and a little bit from here and a little bit from the HSK and things like that. So the HSK does a good job of doing that. For, HSK1 would include all the days of the week and things like that. So for some of those basic ones, I did learn them in those groups, but I got to a point where I have the Pleco dictionary app on my phone, and if at any point I would come across something like that and wanted to go knock those other ones out, I would just start looking things up on my phone and finding out the rest of those. And for me, a lot of it relies upon, there's a lot to be said about noticing patterns and then going and kind of seeking out more of that information. I think it is helpful to be given some of those sets that are similar, like you just described. But you will find that I think there are not a whole lot of sets like that have this like really, really unified similarity to them, or a very like specific, you got colors, you got numbers, you got days of the week, months, after a certain amount of those categories, there really aren't that many that don't start getting to very rarely used words. And not only that, but given we're talking about characters in Chinese, a lot more that involve characters that are only specific to that word or that group of words. So now we're learning characters that are reinforcing this idea that I need to know all of these different words, and I might not even actually use them that often. So that's why, a textbook is going to very, very quickly start diving into, here's all the things in your household, and here's how to say a comb and a brush and a sink and shorts and a shirt and all this sort of stuff. And there's just a balance there, because there's benefits in knowing those things. I wish I knew how to say pretty much everything, but some of those things I find are best to prioritize such that you can get yourself to a high reading level, and then that's when you backtrack and fill in the gaps of anything that you didn't gain through that process. So it's kind of a roundabout way of answering that. I think we certainly could provide those sort of sets for some of the some of the things like you just mentioned there. But
I don't think it's
helpful.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I don't know if it's necessary to have that functionality in JinbuPal. But I think it's an interesting discussion just around kind of practice skills and how some of that will just emerge naturally as you're reading things.
Yeah.
You start to notice how countries are named, right? And you see that pattern everywhere.
Yeah.
But I don't need to really focus on studying a list of country names.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of just knowing the pattern. And then if I'm reading something that talks about Poland, then I'll just learn it then. I don't need to practice that.
And I would say, for the example that you just gave, countries, that reading the news reading a whole lot of stuff is a very good way to learn that, because if they're introducing any character in a book, they're almost always going to mention somebody's nationality and things like that. You just run across a lot of those things. And through that, I've learned a lot of names of countries that I never would have bothered to do if I was deciding to go pick a list of things to do. I would say that the household objects and things that you interact with on a daily basis, like physical objects and then types of food and things like that, those are the real subjects that are very much lacking in most easily available online resources, or and not resources as in teaching resources, but reading something on any sort of blog or news website, or listening to a podcast or a TV show or whatever. It's much more limited in that regard. So in one sense, it shows that category of stuff is not actually as necessary to learn. But also, if you were physically in China and you wanted to go to a grocery store, you'd walk in and you'd see a whole bunch of handwritten characters that you've never seen before and not know what anything was. So whereas a textbook approach might actually have a whole chapter dedicated to those categories. So that's kind of a little bit of a divide between the different methods of how those things are being approached. But those kind of broader categories are a little bit more difficult to capture in the kind of efficient way that we're looking at jump-starting people. Yeah, I don't know if that was a good answer.
No, that was good. Cool. Yeah, I think that's was kind of the meat of what I had for this week. I'd find myself becoming more confident in a lot of the tone stuff and more like, I think it's like after I got over the hump of learning some of the characters and started to really dive into the tones and got into a good routine with the reading, like my curiosity, if that's the right word, has like increased a lot, where it's like, like what I wonder what this means, or like I'm interested in, like I find myself just like randomly picking up my phone and like, okay, let me just like go through some of these sounds.
Yeah.
Like I think the flywheel is starting to go where the practice feels a bit more routine in a certain way. I do still need to like figure out how to like when I miss days, like get back into stride, but it feels it's like it's getting even more exciting than it was before.
Yeah. Well, that's a big step. And I think curious is a really good word. It's that, that's exactly how I would describe it, as I was learning too. I'd sit down and I'd just be listening into a conversation that I didn't need to be involved in really. And I would just, you know, start jotting down in my phone any words that came up that I didn't know that were like used over and over again, like really simple, just kind of interjection words or like conjunctions or introductory clauses and little things like that. You're like, I wonder how I'd say that. And then you just kind of fill in all these little gaps, and all of a sudden you can structure sentences pretty well using a lot of these words that it's hard for you to think of, oh, I should go learn this, until you're just listening to something and realizing that, you only know maybe half of the words you need to translate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say the curiosity is super important. I mean, that's what gets you pulling out your phone and typing something into your dictionary and learning more. Because, as we've said, I hope multiple times throughout this series, is that, we're jump starting you through learning the characters and then doing the same with the words. But, you get this awesome benefit of 80-20 rule through the characters, but 80-20 rule just simply doesn't apply anymore when you get to the words. I mean, it will apply in that a lot of words, you can probably meet those numbers of 80-20, but if you only understand 80% of a sentence, you could completely miss the meaning of what somebody's actually talking about. And that curve, the plateau hits pretty hard. And I'm at, I think I'm at 12,000 words in some of the ways that I'm tracking my stuff, and still I run across many words every day that I don't know. So, you need to learn so many words. And so that's why the curiosity is like the most important element of it. And I like how you said the flywheel too. I mean, you start getting up to speed, and there's kind of no looking back. I feel like once you get to a certain point where now you're looking at an article and you feel like, even if there's a lot of words in it, even if half the words in it you don't understand, now you start understanding a little bit of words, and you start reading through maybe a paragraph and then comparing it to the English and seeing, hey, I was actually had a pretty good guess at what was going on in here. It helps feed that curiosity for sure. Cool. Well,
cool.
yeah.
All right, man. I think that's it for this week. So
cool.
We'll check in next week.
All right. Good talking with you.
All right, man. How are you doing?
Let me say too, anybody watching, if you enjoyed this video, you want to see more like it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And then also head over to our website, JinbuPal.com. There's a ton of other blog posts to supplement everything that we have on this channel. And once the JinbuPal app is up and ready for you to sign up, you can sign up for the app on the website there. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week. And see you next week, David.
See you, man.
All right, bye.